You woke? Time to get up. Thought You Were Woke, No Speed Limit Podcast. I'm your host, Alvin. I hope you guys are having a terrific day. And yes, it's been a while. So, this is the first show, but there are many more coming. And I appreciate every one of you who watches my show. So, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and there's also a little notification bell down there. Every time a show is posted, you will be notified. Now, I did make a post yesterday, with my first post in a while, talking about the Elon Musk press conference, because it had nothing really to do with Trump, even though it was held in the Oval Office. But there's a lot that we need to talk about. We need to talk about Kendrick Lamar. In fact, let's start off today talking about Kendrick Lamar's great performance at the halftime of the Super Bowl. It was the most watched halftime show of any halftime show in the history of NFL football or halftime shows. And, you know, the fact that there's so much controversy over the how good or how bad the show was is amazing. Personally, I'm going to tell you right now, I enjoyed it. It was one of the better performances. It was emotionally and mentally provoking. And that's the kind of halftime performance I can get into. Everybody talks about Usher. Usher was good, but it wasn't great. There was a lot of flaws in it that are memorable. So, you know, people talk about that compared to the two. But here's the difference. This is one that had more substance than Usher's performance. It provoked a message, both about Drake, because everybody's talking about how he talked about Drake, and the fact that it also had some political statements in it, an understanding of the world, how America wants you to be, and how you have the freedom to be what you want to be. So that's what this was about the authoritarian white supremacy overlord. Yeah, maybe I'm making more of this than you think I am, but I'm not. Then there's Uncle Sam, right? He's saying, hey, this is what we need you to be. This is what we want you to be. There's an elitism in this country that tries to tell you who you are and what you are. And this is where Kendrick Lamar broke the mold, even with every song. Remember one time he said it's more than just 40 acres and a mule, right? So this is a what they call a barrier-breaking performance. There was a reason why he used a PlayStation control, and you know, some people say, "Oh, that was a reference to Sony Music." Okay, Drake, but at the same time, it's about the control. Who's got the control of the control stick? Do I have it or do you? You know what? Let me take control. I'm the X button. I'm the square. I'm the triangle on the Xbox. I'm the round button. Yeah. That's me taking control. And that's what Kendrick Lamar was saying in a short way. Of course, there was a lot of statements. Some people saying, well, people are being racist. People who didn't understand it all. I had somebody literally post today, what about the 70% of us that didn't understand performance and didn't like it? But y'all tuned in to record numbers to watch it. My wife, who doesn't follow rap music at all, enjoyed it. She was up dancing, singing. It was one of the best performances ever in the Super Bowl. President Trump left early, from what I understand. He had some words to say about it. He said there was no white dancers. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard he said. He said there was no white dancers. I don't think that's important, but that's important to something I'm going to talk about later about DEI and all that and other stuff. Now, the Super Bowl had a lot of controversies. So another controversy that came up during the Super Bowl was the change of the title in the end zone. And I would like to talk about that for a few minutes. So what the NFL decided to do before the game, and I don't know if it's because Trump was there or anything like that, is, promote love, share love, something like that they were going to put in the end zone instead of end racism. Promote love. Actually, I had no problem with that. And I'm going to tell you why I had no problem with that. So what's wrong with us in our world is that we don't have enough love of each other. Hate provokes anger, hate promotes fear. And one of the biggest things that causes that racism is under that umbrella of hate and fear and anger. So The sign in the end zone said end racism. Now it says let's promote love. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that because that's what we should be doing. We should be loving each other, expressing our love towards other people. God even says in the Bible, love your enemies as you love your neighbor. So if you love people, you don't disrespect them. You don't treat them different because they look different than you or talk different than you or have tattoos or maybe their sexual orientation or a different sexual background because of them. But that's promoting love. That's what they're doing with what they put in the end zone. Now I'm going to go to another aspect of the NFL, why some people get upset with the NFL. Because I'm doing something to cover up what I'm not doing. Or like we're going to talk about this in a few minutes as well. Elon Musk, one of his employees that decided to go on X and make some racially controversial statements and then was rehired later because of J.D. Vance. It's a mess, but we'll talk about that. So then somebody said, well, he should apologize, at least make a public apology. My problem with a public apology is if your heart and mind hasn't changed, it's not a sincere apology, so I don't want to hear it. It's the same with the end racism sign in the end zone, or changing Aunt Jemima a pancake mix, or bottles on the syrup, or Uncle Ben's rice, changing the face on that, doing all these things, print pick things, taking down Confederate statues when you don't have any sincerity behind it. You're just doing it because I don't want to lose money, I don't want to get in trouble, A, B, and C. If you don't have the ability to be sincere, then don't do it. Okay, well, I'm racist. There you go. Now you know. That's what I'd rather hear. That's what I'd rather hear. So that's why I had a problem with that sign in the end zone in the first. That was a response to what happened with Colin Kaepernick, who you never allowed back in the league, who you never gave another opportunity because he decided to take a stance and get on and take a knee. And there's been a fight ever since against NFL players who decide to rebel against what the system is doing. Now, guess what happens? So a coach complained about the fact that there's no black coaches, that they get interviewed and get shafted, right? And then there was other coaches that joined in on a lawsuit, and so now there's black NFL coaches all over the place. And they're good coaches now. They're qualified coaches. So that leads me to the top topic I want to talk about. That's DEI. Reason why I want to talk about DEI, because the NFL has made a decision. Their decision is they're not going to fight against DEI, and it should be an obvious decision as to why, since 80 to 90% of your football teams are African Americans, black men. You got coaches and other people and staff that work for you that are black men. But the NFL has gone through this. It's kind of like they're in a growth period, so they're going to keep up with their DEI programs. But we have a president who is hell-bent on criminalizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. It's DEIA, if you've seen the letter. And I'm going to show it here on the screen in a few minutes. Actually, you're probably looking at it now. Where he actually said we're going to end DEIA. What has that meant? So let's look at the military, for instance. What it means by ending DEIA. There will be no Black History celebrations that have been banned. There are what we call groups for people like Spanish people, for black people, for Native Americans and Muslim people that meet. All those have been disbanded. I don't know if they've dealt with the religious side of things, where there's a imam for the Muslims, there's a rabbi for the Jews, and of course pastors and other people for the Christian sect. I don't know if they've taken those down, but I do know that they've taken away Black History Month. The reason why I say there's irony here is that the one thing, if you read the Constitution, even talking about what is treason in the United States, is a person who makes war, an American citizen who decides to make war against the United States. General Bragg, who was a Confederate general, who once was an American general during the Mexican-American War and before that, but who decided to become a Confederate general during the Civil War. An actual U.S. military base was named after this individual. And of course, this was way back in the 20s or at some time like that when they opened the base. But they named it after this general in honor of a general who actually committed treason against the United States. So what they've done now is that base had renamed itself Fort Liberty. Again, a reaction to racism where there was no real intent behind it as far as I'm actually against racism. But I did it because I don't want any controversy. I don't want any problems. I just got to do this. So now, Hesketh, who is the new defense secretary, has changed the name of that particular base back to Fort Bragg, while in the process of cutting Black History Month, of taking actions against, for instance, a recruiting station is set up at the Fellowship of Black Engineers, where they have this convention where young men can walk in and decide whether they want to be engineers or other careers. And one of those careers, of course, is a career in the military. They have decided to remove themselves from that organization. Black History Month, gone. Other things for indigenous people, for people from Mexico, all those other people who are in the military, Latino Month, and all those things will no longer be celebrated. But we're going to celebrate a Confederate general and put his name back on the base. We're going to put his name back. He did not fly the colors of the United States. He flew the colors of a Confederate general. And this is not the only thing about DEIA. There's more important things we need to talk about. How this could hurt promotion, how this could hurt people actually getting hired in the government, and that some of the jobs that are being taken away now are based on DEIA. Even the President of the United States, the plane crash that was in Washington, D.C. about 2 weeks ago at this point, blamed that on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, we do know that the pilot was a white female of the helicopter, and it was a black man who was the pilot of the aircraft that was also involved. We know this. But he decided it's because of DEIA. Maybe it was some error at the airport. Or maybe it was because of the overworked traffic controllers who there are not enough of. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe diversity, equity, and inclusion had nothing into it, because these are two qualified pilots who have been flying for a number of years that were doing their job that happened to have an accident. Accidents are possible. There's been several other accidents. There was a plane in Philadelphia that crashed. There was another plane in Arizona just yesterday that ran off the runway. That has nothing to do with DEIA. That has to do with technicalities. Okay? That's possible. Things like this happen in the world. So we want to get involved in diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know RFK Jr., right? Robert Frederick Kennedy Jr. Popular lawyer, crazy guy who ran as an independent against Biden and Trump. Trump then made a deal with him so he would get out of the election and hopefully garner the votes. It helped him it helped Trump in his election. But this guy now is the head of the CDC. This man has no experience as a doctor. He has no experience in the medical field of any kind. He doesn't even have a degree in hospital administration. He has nothing. But he is now the head of the CDC. He's the Health and Human Services Secretary. So there's no telling what he's going to do in office, because he has no idea what he's doing. He has none whatsoever, but he's the head of that. Hesketh was a major in the Army, never became a general, has never had any true executive office situations in which he has been a leader in the military. Then there is the Secretary of Education, who happens to be the head of the WWE. Her only experience is 1 year as a member of the school board in North Carolina. She had 1 year doing that. And that was a while back. And then it was come to find out she lied. She claimed she had an education degree and that she was a certified teacher. And she lied. She was not. She was not. Hesketh, let's go back to him. He's also got controversies on him. He's married he's on his third wife. He cheated on each wife. There are some rumors that he may have committed, abuse to them, but the women involved have said no, there wasn't any abuse involved. But Hedges has not shown any loyalty that he could take an oath and he'll break it because he's been married 3 times. So if you don't trust me, you don't have to. But what I'm saying is, he's showing that he's not good at keeping oaths. He has not proven that he is. He has other controversies. He's had paid money because of a woman that he supposedly messed around with to keep her a hush money. So we got people, and people say, who cares about that? Because we got Trump in office. He's a convicted felon. Big deal. I know people say that all the time, right? But the whole diversity, equity, inclusion, if you look at the cabinet that Trump has even put forth, there's only one black man. One black man. Guess what he's over? Housing and urban development. He loves to put black people in over housing and urban development because I guess everybody that's black is in the projects. I don't know. I guess that's his belief that we're all in the project, which is not true. Not true at all. But we have to deal with this defacing type situation that we get from people like Donald Trump, conservatives. So let's go over some of the other illogical things going on right now in the White House. Logical, illogical. So there's a lot of discussion over Elon Musk destroying and tearing through our government agencies. And, I'm going to say this. There have always been some things that we've needed to fix. I've said we spend too much money on foreign military aid. I have said that in the past that we need to see what we're spending out as far as TANF funds. And what I mean by TANF is that we give block grants to states, and we don't know if those states are using the funds to actually feed the poor people or give the cash benefits they're supposed to give to poor people. We don't know. You know why we don't know? Because look what just happened with Brett Favre, about a year ago, 2 years ago, and in the state of Mississippi, where we found that they were money laundering money out to other companies and to the University of Southern Miss to build some kind of a volleyball stadium, while at the same time claiming that this was to help poor people get educated about how to get jobs and stuff like that, or how to or give more food to people. So we've given this is the thing. You have to understand, this happened during the Clinton administration. We're giving jobs to people, or giving grants to these states. We've decided that we're going to give grants and let them decide how they do out the TANF fund. We also put the work requirement that people keep talking about, that we need to make people work if they're on welfare. Actually, people do, because they have to work in order to get welfare. Which leads to another situation that I want to talk about in a few minutes. And I'm going to add that to this because it's important that we talk about it. I'm going to have a show every week about something different. But one of those things we aren't looking at right now is the TANF fund. Maybe he will, because instead of those things going to people, we don't know if they're going to institutions to be done for other things that have nothing to do with giving food to people and money access to people who are poor. Because in the state of Mississippi, they say 99% of those funds are not going to the people they need to go to. So what's that percentage in Alabama? What's that percentage in Georgia? What's that percent across the country where that money is not going where it needs to because you just gave them a grant and they pretty much get to do what they want with it? So yeah, there's stuff we need to look at. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is this. Because I'm not exactly sure what Elon Musk is doing, because I get an audit. I hire a person that's an auditor. Conflict of interest. Let's talk about that first. Here's a conflict of interest. He also he's a stockholder in a company that has, several companies actually, that have contracts with the United States of America. And in fact, when he was asked that question yesterday, he said, well, I don't hold the contracts. That's my company that holds the contracts. I don't. Because in this country, we have this lie that we tell that a corporation is separate from the owners that own it. In other words, it's an entity and the owners are an entity. He's a majority stockholder in the folks. He's got Skylink. He's got his X rocket company, all that stuff. And he's just a majority stockholder. He says the managers of that account, they're the ones that are holding that. So I have a right to go and tear through all these other contracts and do that. That's kind of hypocritical and at the same time unethical. Is it legal? That's what the courts are for. But here's another thing he said. Oh, it's activist judges that are stopping me. Let me explain something. This comes from this country. Let me explain something. Did you call the Supreme Court last year activist judges when they gave Donald Trump and other presidents immunity? Allowed them to do whatever the heck they wanted to? Did you call them activist judges when they went against affirmative action? Did you call them activist judges when they stripped the voting rights bill twice? Did you call them activist judges when they hit up the Fearless Fund? Okay, if you don't know what the Fearless Fund is, let me explain this. This was a grant by private people who were giving out grants to individuals, to women, black women, to start business because they have the least amount of capital, they have the least amount of opportunity, and these people are giving these people opportunity to try to get a head start. They decided that the courts, the federal courts, activists, and I want to call them what they are, activists in the Supreme Court decided that was unconstitutional and not fair. Then there was a case in the Dakotas where the Native Americans were suing because they felt their voting rights were being violated. And the courts literally said they don't, as individuals, have a right to put forth a lawsuit. It's the determination of the Department of Justice or the Attorney General of that state or the nation that is allowed to do that. Those, again, are activist judges. Because we talk about the strict constitutionality that the Republicans claim they believe in. But yesterday, Elon Musk called these activist judges, and J.D. Vance on Sunday said they had no business doing what they do. But that's not what it says here in the Article 3 of the Constitution. The judicial powers extended to all cases in the law of equity arising under the Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority to call all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls. So right now, guess what Elon Musk is? Public minister. So we have a right to decide whether he is legally doing what he's doing. We have a right to take a look at that. Yes, I understand the President of the United States. That's what Article 2 talks about. The President is the executive, so on and so forth. Now, like I said, if this was a simple audit, I take my audit sheet and say, I need to cut A, B, and C. Here's the problem. Congress has already set a budget. They've set a budget for this year. So I have to answer for everything. Elon Musk and Trump have shut down USAID. They shut it down, literally shut it down. There was a budget set aside for that. Supposedly they moved the funds over to the State Department. They're going to move into the Department of Education. They're talking about shutting down the Department of Education, shutting down money that was allocated for grants and funds to the Department of Education and to schools. They're also talking about research money that may not be going to where it's supposed to. We've been talking about refund checks for income tax. We've been talking about farm subsidies that may not go where they're supposed to, even though this money was set aside by Congress, which did its job, its constitutional job, and now is being taken away. You understand? We can keep saying, oh, well, this is great and wonderful. People just getting upset because we've been wanting an audit for years. But there's more than that needs to be audited. Let me explain something. Let me get outside the loop. And people are going to get mad. Oh, you're way outside the loop. We need to audit our businesses. We just got rid of one of the bureaus that's responsible for claiming money for people that's lost. They review companies to see how they're stealing money from individuals. We've shut them down. Elon yesterday said we're going to deregulate so we can have $1 trillion worth of profit in this country. And there's people going without being smart enough to realize. So people are being robbed every day by insurance companies. Let me explain this. There's an article I need to show you, and I'll put it on the screen right now. Optimum Health. I use Optimum Health also. Optimum Health. There's a case pending against Optimum Health where a young man was denied an inhaler and he died. Walgreens offered no alternative, so Walgreens is in trouble too. But we remember what happened back in December, right, of last year. A young man committed a crime. His crime was he killed the head of United Healthcare. The head of United Healthcare actually had a whole speech that he gave on denying claims. There are millions, not thousands, millions of stories where people's health care have been affected by how insurance industries have taken your money. They increase your premiums and and what you have to pay out every year. They increase your premiums and your deductibles. They decrease the amount that they're actually going to pay out. And now they're telling you what you can and cannot get unless you get the pre-authorization, which takes forever and goes through doctors that have no idea what they're doing or what's even on that paper. But we're not looking at things like that. Oh, no, we just need to audit our government and they'll fix problems in the United States for people. We have people right now who can't get insurance for floods. We have people who can't fix the roof on their house because of insurance. Prices are too high because companies have shut down and shuttered production plants. We have plenty of farmers, but they don't have they're funneling through basically like a cone. If you ever seen a cone, you know how a cone funnels down, everything's got to funnel down into one little spot. They're living in a world like that because this producer wants to be cheap. In other words, there's a lot of farmers and not enough places to sell your goods. Not enough middlemen to sell your goods. If that farmer could sell direct to market, guess what? Your eggs would be cheaper. Here's another problem with the CDC and all the things that are going on since they've shut it down and not allowing information is chickens are being killed by the barn loads right now. So literally, you see this video right here that's playing? There are lines for eggs like there would be for oil. I hadn't even talked about the situation at the border. Let me give that a few minutes. The situation at the border. What that has done is it's literally there are things that are supposed to be built that aren't being built because of, our little buddies from foreign countries who work on these construction sites aren't working right now. There are crops that aren't being picked because they were doing the hard work that other Americans didn't want to do. There are buildings that now they have to use employees to clean the building. I'm not even talking about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and their H-1B visas that they want to keep so they can keep bringing cheap labor over here to work in their Silicon Valley companies. I'm not even talking about that. Somebody called it the other day, what they call those indentured servants. They work for a limited time for a limited price and then they get out of the country. But we keep saying he calls American workers lazy. Vivek said it. Elon said he didn't say it exactly, so he kind of pushed Vivek out the door because of what he said. But that's what he said, right? So then that goes back to our government. How are we investing in education? Are we putting money? Are we now that we're changing the Department of Education? Are we now going to put money into junior colleges and job training programs in high schools and colleges? Or are we just shutting down, saying we're making money savings and telling a lie? This is the lie that Elon Musk told yesterday while Donald Trump just sat there in the Oval Office, in the place where you expect the president to speak. He barely said 2 words. He was sitting there saying that by next year, we'll have no inflation. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you by next year, egg prices will be $20, $25 for just a dozen of eggs if we keep it up at this situation. If we keep listening to this, if we're not doing what we actually should be doing, and it doesn't fall just on the White House, it falls on Congress. If we're not doing the things what we need to do, if we're not monopolizing these businesses that have monopolized themselves, if we're not allowing entrepreneurship, if we're not putting money into entrepreneurship like we should, then we should expect to continue to see prices rise. If we're not increasing the minimum wage so that people can take us, that's not being talked about right now at all. Let's talk about that for a minute. Minimum wage has been nationally sitting at $7.25, and there's states like Mississippi, Alabama, who have decided that $7.25 is great. They would keep their foot on the neck of their people with $7.25. Not to mention the whole thing with not respecting unions. Oh, we got all these car plants, so we don't need unions because that's going to mess things up and keep people from making money. I totally disagree. Minimum wage right now should be $25 an hour. Honestly, it should be. But the minimum we can ask for is $17 an hour. $17 an hour, just so people can live in places where they got to pay almost $2,000, $3,000 for rent. Now, some states have set their minimum wage at a higher rate. They've done that already, but it would be great if it's set nationally to force these states that won't change it to change it. That's something we need to do. Now, I talked today because I just wanted to talk in general today. There will be specific subjects that I will get on as weeks go by. I want to thank you guys today for listening to my show, and I hope that you have a great and wonderful day. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. Peace.
You have been listening to Thought You Were Woke, No Speed Limit Podcast.